The Oracle Arena buzzed with the electric energy that only a Warriors home game could generate. The October evening carried the crisp promise of a new NBA season, and the crowd of 1996 was already on its feet before the opening tip. Stephen Curry adjusted his shooting sleeves, his pre-game ritual as familiar as breathing, when he noticed something different in the opposing team's huddle. Marcus Thompson, the Denver Nuggets' newly acquired point guard, was staring directly at him with an intensity that felt personal. Curry had faced countless rivals throughout his career, but this felt different. Thompson was relatively unknown, a second-year player who'd spent most of his rookie season on the bench. Yet here he was, starting against the Warriors, and his eyes held something that made Curry's stomach tighten. The game began with typical Warriors precision. Curry drained his first three-pointer from the logo, sending the crowd into a frenzy. But as he backpedaled down the court, Thompson jogged alongside him, close enough that his words cut through the arena's roar. "Nice shot, family man," Thompson said, his voice carrying a mocking edge that made Curry's steps falter for just a moment. "Hope your kids are watching. Might be the last good thing they see Daddy do tonight." Curry's jaw clenched. In 15 years of professional basketball, he'd heard every taunt imaginable. But bringing up his children, Riley, Ryan, and Cannon, crossed a line he'd never encountered on the court. He tried to shake it off, focusing on the next possession, but Thompson wasn't finished. Throughout the first quarter, the provocations continued. During a timeout, as Curry wiped sweat from his brow, Thompson positioned himself within earshot. "Your wife must be proud, watching you choke in front of the whole world. Kids, too. What are they? 8 and 6 now? Old enough to understand disappointment." The words hit Curry like a physical blow. Aisha and the kids were indeed in the stands, section 120, seats they'd occupied for years. Riley was now 13, Ryan 11, and Cannon 5. Thompson had done his homework. The personal nature of the attacks felt calculated, designed to get under his skin in a way that pure basketball trash talk never could. By halftime, Curry's shooting was off. He'd made only 3 of 9 attempts from beyond the arc, and his usual court vision seemed clouded. In the locker room, Coach Steve Kerr pulled him aside. "Steph, what's going on out there? You look like you're playing angry, and that's not your game." Curry ran his hands through his hair, the frustration evident in his voice. "It's Thompson. He's not just talking basketball, Coach. He's bringing up my family, my kids. It's personal." Kerr's expression hardened. He'd seen players try to get under Curry's skin before, but this was different. "You want me to have a word with their coach?" "No," Curry said firmly. "I need to handle this myself, but not the way he expects." The third quarter proved to be a disaster for the Warriors. Thompson's psychological warfare was working. Every time Curry caught the ball, he could see his rival's smirk, could almost hear the next cutting remark. The Nuggets outscored the Warriors 35-18 in the third, turning what should have been a comfortable home victory into a nail-biter. With 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter and the Warriors trailing by 7, Thompson made his most personal attack yet. During a dead ball, he stepped close to Curry and spoke in a voice only the two of them could hear. "You know what's funny? Your kids are gonna grow up knowing their dad was soft, that when it really mattered, when someone got in his head, he crumbled. That's your legacy, Curry. That's what they'll remember." Something inside Curry snapped, not into anger, but into a strange kind of clarity. He looked at Thompson, really looked at him, and saw something he'd missed before. Behind the bravado and the cruel words, there was desperation. This wasn't confidence. It was a young player trying to make a name for himself by tearing down someone else. The Warriors lost 112-108, their first home defeat of the season. As the final buzzer sounded, Curry stood at center court, his hands on his hips, processing what had just happened. The crowd filed out quietly, disappointed but not devastated. It was, after all, just one game in a long season. But for Curry, it felt like more than that. As he walked toward the tunnel, he made a decision that would surprise everyone, including himself. Instead of heading straight to the locker room, he waited. He waited for Marcus Thompson to finish his post-game interviews, to celebrate with his teammates, to bask in the glow of his psychological victory. Because Stephen Curry had something to say, and he was going to say it in a way that no one, least of all Marcus Thompson, would expect. The Chase Center's corridors were quieter now, the post-game energy settling into the familiar rhythm of another NBA evening. Most players had retreated to their respective locker rooms, but Stephen Curry remained in the hallway outside the visitors' facility, his back against the wall, still in his Warriors uniform. The security guards knew him well enough not to question his presence, though they exchanged curious glances. Curry's phone buzzed with the usual post-game notifications, Twitter mentions, text messages from family, ESPN alerts about the game. He ignored them all. His mind was elsewhere, replaying not just the game's events, but moments from his own past that Thompson's words had stirred up. He thought about his father, Del Curry, and the stories he'd shared about facing adversity during his own NBA career. Del had always taught him that strength wasn't about hitting back harder. It was about choosing your response. "Son," he'd said once, "the mark of a man isn't how he handles victory, but how he handles being tested." 20 minutes passed before Marcus Thompson emerged from the visitors' locker room, his hair still damp from the shower, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. The smile faded when he saw Curry waiting for him. "Well, well," Thompson said, his voice carrying the same mocking tone from the court. "The Golden Boy wants a private conversation? What's next? You gonna cry about how I hurt your feelings?" Curry pushed off from the wall and walked toward Thompson, but his approach was calm, almost gentle. When he stopped, he was close enough that their conversation would remain private, but far enough away that it couldn't be mistaken for aggression. "Marcus," he said quietly, "I need to ask you something." Thompson's defensive posture softened slightly, caught off guard by the use of his first name and the absence of anger in Curry's voice. "What? Why my family? Why my kids?" The question hung in the air between them. Thompson's jaw worked as if he were chewing on a response, but no words came immediately. "Curry," continued, his voice steady and curious rather than accusatory, "I've been in this league for 15 years. I've heard every insult, every attempt to get in my head. But you went after my children tonight, kids who've never done anything to you, who don't even know you exist. So I'm asking, why?" "Because it worked," Thompson said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Did it?" Curry asked. "Did it really? Because from where I'm standing, it seems like you're the one who's hurting." The words hit Thompson like a physical blow. His face flushed, and for a moment the mask of aggressive confidence slipped entirely. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Maybe not," Curry admitted, "but I know what desperation looks like. I know what it feels like to think you have to tear someone else down to build yourself up. And Marcus, that's not who you have to be." Thompson's hands clenched into fists at his sides. "You think you're better than me? With your perfect family and your perfect career and your perfect life?" "No," Curry said simply. "I think I'm lucky, and I think you're talented enough that you don't need to attack other people's families to prove yourself." The hallway fell silent except for the distant sounds of the arena cleaning crew. Thompson stared at Curry, his expression cycling through confusion, anger, and something that might have been shame. "You want to know why?" Thompson finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Because I grew up without a father. Because I spent my whole childhood watching other kids get picked up after practice while I waited for my mom to finish her second job. Because seeing you with your perfect family, knowing your kids get to watch their dad succeed every night, it makes me sick." Curry felt his chest tighten with unexpected emotion. "Marcus." "Don't," Thompson said, raising a hand. "Don't you dare pity me. I don't need your sympathy." "I'm not offering sympathy," Curry replied. "I'm offering understanding. Because you're right. I am lucky. I had a father who played in this league, who taught me how to handle the pressure and the criticism. I have a wife who supports me unconditionally, kids who give me perspective on what really matters. But Marcus, none of that diminishes what you've accomplished." Thompson's expression shifted, the aggression giving way to something more vulnerable. "What I've accomplished? I'm a second-year player who barely gets minutes. Tonight was the first time I've felt like I belonged on the same court as you." "That's not true," Curry said firmly. You scored 18 points on 60% shooting. You had 7 assists and only 2 turnovers. You outplayed me for 3 quarters, and you did it with skill, not just mind games. That's what belonging looks like. For the first time since their conversation began, Thompson's shoulders relaxed slightly. You actually watched my stats? I watch everyone's stats, Curry said with a slight smile. It's part of the job. But Marcus, what you did tonight, the way you got in my head, that's not going to make you a better player. It's going to make you a player that other people don't want to play with. Thompson looked down at his feet, processing the words. When he looked back up, his expression had changed entirely. The aggressive facade was gone, replaced by something raw and honest. I don't know how to be anything else, he admitted. I've been angry for so long, I don't remember what it feels like not to be. Curry nodded slowly. I get that. But anger isn't strength, Marcus. It's just noise. And eventually, the noise drowns out everything else, including the voice telling you how good you really are. The conversation was interrupted by the sound of footsteps in the hallway. Both players turned to see Ayesha Curry approaching, her expression concerned, but not angry. Steph, everything okay? She asked, her eyes taking in the scene. Her husband in quiet conversation with the player who'd spent the evening attacking their family. Everything's fine, Curry said gently. Ayesha, I'd like you to meet Marcus Thompson. Marcus, this is my wife, Ayesha. Thompson's face flushed with embarrassment. Mrs. Curry, I owe you an apology. What I said tonight about your family, it was wrong. There's no excuse for it. Ayesha studied him for a moment, then smiled. Not the practiced smile of a public figure, but the genuine warmth of someone who recognized pain when she saw it. Apology accepted, Marcus, but more importantly, are you okay? The question caught Thompson completely off guard. After spending the evening attacking this family, the last thing he'd expected was concern for his well-being. His voice cracked slightly when he responded, I honestly don't know. The three of them stood in the hallway for a moment, the weight of the evening's events settling around them like dust after a storm. Ayesha Curry had always possessed an intuitive understanding of people, a gift that had served her well throughout her husband's career. She could see past Marcus Thompson's defensive walls to the young man beneath, and what she saw moved her. Marcus, she said gently, have you eaten? I mean really eaten, not just whatever they serve in the locker room? Thompson blinked, confused by the question. No, ma'am. I usually just grab something on the way back to the hotel. That's not what I asked, Ayesha said with a knowing smile. Stephen, what do you think? Should we invite Marcus to join us for dinner? Curry looked at his wife, then at Thompson, seeing the young player's confusion and uncertainty. I think that's a great idea. Marcus, there's a quiet place nearby where we can talk without cameras and reporters. What do you say? Thompson's first instinct was to refuse. Every defensive mechanism he'd built over the years screamed at him to walk away, to maintain the distance that had protected him for so long. But something in Ayesha's genuine concern and Curry's patient demeanor made him pause. I don't understand, he said finally. I spent the whole game attacking your family. Why would you want to have dinner with me? Because, Curry said simply, I think you're worth understanding. 30 minutes later, they sat in a small Italian restaurant in downtown San Francisco, the kind of place that valued privacy over publicity. The owner, a longtime Warriors fan named Giuseppe, had discreetly seated them in a corner booth, away from other diners. Marcus Thompson sat across from Stephen and Ayesha Curry, still struggling to process how his evening had taken such an unexpected turn. So, Ayesha said, cutting into her chicken parmesan, tell us about yourself, Marcus. Where are you from? Thompson hesitated, unused to genuine interest in his background. Detroit, East Side. My mom raised me and my younger sister alone after my dad left when I was 8. That must have been hard, Curry said, not as a platitude but as a statement of fact. It was, Thompson admitted. Basketball was the only thing that made sense. It was the only place where I felt like I had control over anything. As the conversation continued, Thompson found himself sharing details he'd never told anyone. Not teammates, not coaches, not even close friends. He talked about his mother, Denise, who worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table and still made it to his high school games. He described the pressure he'd felt to make it to the NBA, not just for himself but for his family's financial security. "I remember watching you play when I was in high school," Thompson said to Curry. "You made it look so easy, so effortless, like you were just playing for the love of the game." "That's not entirely true," Curry replied. "I had pressure too. Different pressure, but pressure nonetheless. When your father played in the NBA, people expect you to be good immediately. They expect you to live up to a legacy you didn't create. But you had support," Thompson pointed out. "You had people who believed in you." "I did," Curry acknowledged, "and that's exactly why I know how much harder it must have been for you to get here without that support system." Aisha leaned forward slightly. "Marcus, what you've accomplished, making it to the NBA from where you started, that's incredible. But what happened tonight? The way you went after our family, that's not you. That's just pain talking." Thompson's eyes filled with unexpected tears. "I don't know how to let go of the anger. It's been my fuel for so long, I'm afraid if I let it go, I'll lose my edge." "Can I tell you something?" Curry said, leaning back in his chair. "My first few years in the league, I played angry too. I was angry at everyone who said I was too small, too weak, too slow. I was angry at the injuries, at the doubt, at the criticism. And you know what? It made me a worse player." "How?" Thompson asked. "Because anger is reactive," Curry explained. "It makes you respond to what other people think instead of playing your own game. The best players, the ones who last, they don't play angry. They play with purpose." "But how do you find purpose when you're not sure you belong?" Thompson asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Aisha and Stephen exchanged a look. They'd both recognized something in this young man that reminded them of themselves, at difficult moments in their own journeys. "Marcus," Aisha said softly, "can I ask you something personal?" He nodded. "When was the last time someone told you they were proud of you?" The question hit Thompson like a physical blow. He sat in silence for a long moment, his hands folded on the table, processing the question. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. "I can't remember," he said finally. "Well," Curry said, his voice firm but gentle, "I'm proud of you. Not for tonight's game, but for sitting here right now. For being willing to have this conversation instead of walking away. For caring enough about becoming better to listen to people you attacked just hours ago." Thompson's composure finally broke. The tears he'd been holding back for years, maybe his entire life, began to flow. Aisha reached across the table and placed her hand over his, a simple gesture that conveyed more acceptance than any words could. "I'm sorry," Thompson said through his tears. "I'm so sorry for what I said about your children. I was trying to hurt you because I was hurting, and that's not who I want to be." "We know," Curry said simply. "And we forgive you." The conversation continued for another hour, covering everything from Thompson's aspirations as a player to his fears about his future. By the time they prepared to leave, something fundamental had shifted. The angry young man who'd entered the restaurant had been replaced by someone more open, more vulnerable, and paradoxically, stronger. As they stood to leave, Giuseppe approached their table with a knowing smile. "Mr. Curry, it's always good to see you. And you, young man," he said to Thompson, "you come back any time. Anyone who sits at this table is family." Outside the restaurant, the three of them stood together in the cool San Francisco evening. The city's lights twinkled around them, but the moment felt intimate and private. "Marcus," Curry said, "I want to give you my number. Not because I'm trying to be your mentor or anything like that, but because I think you're going to do great things, and sometimes it helps to have someone who believes in you." Thompson accepted the phone, entering the contact information with hands that shook slightly. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Aisha said. "Just be better tomorrow than you were today. That's all any of us can do." As they parted ways, Thompson heading back to his hotel and the Currys to their car, none of them realized that their conversation had been witnessed by a restaurant employee who'd recognized the NBA players. By morning, the story would begin to spread, but not in the way any of them expected. The narrative was about to change completely. Marcus Thompson woke up in his Denver hotel room to 57 missed calls and 1,047 Twitter notifications. His phone had been buzzing continuously since 6 a.m., and he'd ignored it, assuming it was the usual post-game noise. But this felt different. This felt overwhelming. The first text message he opened was from his mother. "Baby, I'm so proud of you. Call me when you can." Confused, Thompson opened Twitter and immediately understood why his phone had been exploding. A photo of him, Stephen Curry, and Aisha Curry leaving Giuseppe's restaurant together was trending nationwide. But it wasn't just the photo. It was the story that had emerged overnight. The restaurant employee who'd taken the picture had also overheard fragments of their conversation. More importantly, he'd witnessed Thompson's emotional breakdown and the Curry's compassionate response. Instead of selling the story to a tabloid, he'd posted it on his personal Instagram with a caption that read, "Sometimes the most beautiful thing about sports isn't what happens on the court. Witnessed something special tonight. Respect, humanity. Real recognize real." The post had been shared thousands of times, picked up by major sports outlets, and had spawned a conversation about mental health, family, and forgiveness in professional sports. ESPN had already reached out to both players' agents requesting interviews. Thompson's phone rang. It was his teammate, Jamal Murray. "Bro, what the hell happened last night?" Murray asked, his voice a mixture of concern and curiosity. "The whole team's talking about it. Coach wants to see you when you get back to Denver." "It's complicated," Thompson said, still processing the situation himself. "Man, I don't know what you said or did, but Stephen Curry just posted something on Instagram about you. You need to see it." Thompson quickly opened Instagram and found Curry's post from an hour earlier, a photo of the three of them from dinner, with a caption that would be remembered long after the basketball season ended. "Last night, a Marcus Thompson 5 reminded me why I love this game. Not because of the competition, but because of the people. Sometimes our opponents teach us the most about ourselves. Sometimes the person trying to tear you down is really just asking to be built up. Marcus, you've got a bright future ahead of you, and I'm honored to call you a friend. To everyone watching, this is what sports should be about, bringing out the best in each other, even when we're on opposite sides. More than basketball. Real, recognize real." The post had already garnered over 800,000 likes and 15,000 comments. Thompson scrolled through the responses, overwhelmed by the outpouring of support from fans, players, and complete strangers. One comment stood out. "This is why Steph is the real MVP, on and off the court." Another read, "Both these men showed class. This is beautiful to see." But perhaps the most meaningful came from LeBron James. "This is what leadership looks like. Proud of both of y'all." Thompson's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Marcus, this is Steph. I hope you're doing okay with all the attention this morning. Remember what we talked about. This is your moment to define who you want to be. I'm here if you need anything." An hour later, Thompson was on a conference call with ESPN's Rachel Nichols, nervously adjusting his hotel room's lighting for the video interview. He'd never been the subject of a major sports story before, and certainly not for something like this. "Marcus," Nichols began, "tell us what happened last night. The photo shows you leaving dinner with Stephen and Aisha Curry after a game where, by all accounts, things got pretty heated between you two." Thompson took a deep breath. "Rachel, I made a mistake. During the game, I said things about Stephen's family that were completely out of line. I was trying to get in his head, but I was really just showing how much I was struggling with my own demons. And Stephen confronted you about this after the game." "Not the way you'd expect," Thompson said, a slight smile crossing his face. "He didn't come at me with anger. He came with curiosity. He asked me why I felt the need to attack his family, and when I couldn't give him a good answer, he helped me understand what was really going on." "Which was?" Thompson paused, considering how much to reveal. "I've been carrying a lot of pain from my childhood. Growing up without a father, watching my mom struggle to provide for us, feeling like I had to be angry to survive. But Steven and Aisha showed me that strength doesn't come from tearing other people down. It comes from building each other up. The interview continued for 15 minutes, with Thompson speaking more openly about his background and struggles than he ever had publicly. When it ended, he felt both exhausted and liberated. Meanwhile, in the Warriors' practice facility, Stephen Curry was fielding his own media requests. Coach Steve Kerr had pulled him aside before practice to discuss the situation. "Steph, what you did last night, that was special. But you know this is going to follow both of you for a while, right?" "I know," Curry replied. "But it's worth it if it helps Marcus. And honestly, it helped me too. It reminded me why I love this game beyond just winning. The front office wants to make sure you're comfortable with all the attention this is getting." "Coach," Curry said with a grin, "I've been dealing with attention my whole career, but this is the first time I've gotten attention for something that might actually matter more than basketball." 3 weeks later, the Warriors and Nuggets faced each other again, this time in Denver. The story of Curry and Thompson's dinner had continued to generate discussion about sportsmanship, mental health, and personal growth. Both players had been invited to speak at various events, and Thompson had started working with a therapist to address his childhood trauma. Before the game, Thompson approached Curry during warm-ups. "Steph, I wanted to thank you again. The last few weeks have been life-changing." "How so?" Curry asked, genuinely curious. "I talked to my mom for the first time in 6 months. Really talked, not just the usual check-in. I told her about our conversation, about the therapy, about wanting to be better. She cried, man, happy tears." Curry smiled. "That's beautiful, Marcus. How are you feeling about tonight's game?" "Nervous," Thompson admitted, "but excited. I want to show you and everyone else that I can compete with respect." The game itself was everything basketball should be. Both players competed fiercely but fairly, pushing each other to excel without crossing personal lines. Thompson finished with 24 points and 8 assists, while Curry dropped 32 points in a Warriors victory. But the real victory came in the final moments of the game. With 10 seconds left and the Warriors up by 5, Curry had the ball and could have easily run out the clock. Instead, he passed it to Thompson on a steal attempt, a sign of respect that didn't go unnoticed by the crowd or the cameras. After the final buzzer, the two players embraced at center court, a moment that was captured by dozens of photographers and would grace the front page of sports sections across the country the next morning. In the post-game press conference, a reporter asked Curry about the pass to Thompson in the final seconds. "Sometimes," Curry said, "the best way to win is to show your opponent that you respect them. Marcus has grown so much these past few weeks, and I wanted to acknowledge that. Competition doesn't have to be about destroying each other. It can be about bringing out the best in each other." Thompson, in his own press conference, was asked about the impact of his relationship with Curry. "3 weeks ago, I thought I had to be angry to be successful," he said. "Steven and Aisha taught me that I could be strong without being destructive, that I could compete without being cruel. It's changed not just how I play basketball, but how I live my life." 6 months later, Marcus Thompson would be named the NBA's most improved player, not just for his statistical growth, but for his leadership and sportsmanship. He'd go on to establish a foundation for children from single-parent homes, with Stephen and Aisha Curry as his first major donors and board members. The story of their unlikely friendship became a case study in sports psychology programs and was featured in a Netflix documentary about mental health in professional athletics. But for both men, the real victory wasn't in the accolades or recognition. It was in the proof that sometimes the most important game isn't won on the court. It's won in the moments when we choose to see the humanity in our opponents and in ourselves. Their rivalry had become something more powerful, a friendship built on mutual respect, understanding, and the recognition that everyone deserves a second chance to be better than they were yesterday. And in a world that often celebrates tearing each other down, they had shown that building each other up was the real victory worth pursuing.